Daredevil is one of my favorite Marvel characters, and ever since I made this video on my channel, I have been reading his comics. I'm not the biggest comic book reader, I don't have an encyclopedia knowledge of Daredevil as a character, and I don't pretend to know things that I don't like everyone on comic book Twitter, but also at the same time, I feel like I'm a normal person. I want to give my advice on where it is best to start with Daredevil comics if you want to hop into it, and I have first-hand experience on how hard it is to hop into comics, so I wanted to make a video that could make it easier for other people. So if you wanted to get into Daredevil comics, here we go. First off, if you're new to comics, I like to establish how comics work because they really are different and just completely on their own wavelength compared to any other literary medium. Most people normally think if they want to start reading Daredevil, they have to start off with Stan Lee Daredevil and read all the way from the 1960s to the present day to understand his character. And that's just not how comics work. And trust me, I totally get it. This was exactly what I thought when I was getting into comics. But comics don't work like manga, where you start with chapter 1, or a TV show where you have to start with episode 1. You can kind of start with anywhere, and I'll tell you why. So a character like Daredevil will have these things called runs. So what a run is you have a main writer who will write the story for a little bit and then they'll leave and then a new writer takes over. So Stan Lee was the main writer of the first run of Daredevil, and when he finished, Roy Thomas took over the run. So when a new writer takes over and starts their run on a character, that is a great place to hop into because they are creating their new take on the story, and most runs just rely on themselves and everything else they'll explain. So you don't need to read everything. Don't stress out, just have fun, read what sounds interesting to you. Anyway, here are my recommendations, here we go. First comic I would recommend to new Daredevil readers is Daredevil Man Without Fear. This is written by Frank Miller, who did other stories like The Dark Knight Returns, which is amazing, and just like that, it's really great. Daredevil Man Without Fear is great. It's short, it's powerful, and it's basically the origin story for his entire character. If you love season 1 of Daredevil where he's got his black suit, well, this is where it's from. It's really fun, it's a great run, and it really establishes you into the world of Daredevil. But what I think it does even better is show you if you like Frank Miller as an author, because he's one of the most important writers that Daredevil has ever had. If you like this story, I'd also recommend you just go and read Born Again, which is what season 3 of the Daredevil show is adapted from. And if you like that, you can go read Frank Miller's entire run on the character. It introduces characters like Elektra and Bullseye and Kingpin, it reintroduces him, and you'll have a lot of fun with this run. It is older though, the art sometimes I can feel is a little off-putting for new comic book readers. That said though, this is like the classic Daredevil run. If you want to go straight to basics and understand who the character is fundamentally, go on this run. But if you really just want to focus on Daredevil in his early years, I would say the best comic to read, and my favorite comic that has ever been written for Daredevil, is Daredevil Yellow. Daredevil Yellow is written by Jeff Loeb and the art is done by Tim Sale. This is the same creative duo that brought you The Long Halloween for Batman, and Daredevil Yellow for me is even better. It follows up a storyline that came out of Kevin Smith's Daredevil run, but it stands alone. It's a love letter to Karen Page from Matt as he rethinks his early years as Daredevil. It's sweet, it's beautifully drawn, it's my favorite drawn Daredevil comic, and it's a true masterpiece. If you read any book from this list, I'd recommend you read Daredevil Yellow. It's one of those where you could give it to your mom and she would think it's good. It's hard for me to explain just how much I love this book. I just think it's a masterpiece. If you want the exact opposite of Daredevil Yellow, then I got one for you, because if you want a long drawn out multi-year saga like the Daredevil Netflix show, then the one run you gotta read is Brian Michael Bendis' run on Daredevil from the early 2000s. This is that gritty look at Daredevil. This is what you think of when you think of the show. This is the exact tone that the show took its inspiration from, and it is so heavily inspired by it. This is a more grounded and dirty look at Daredevil as he gets his identity revealed by the Kingpin. He moves up the ladder of power and eventually to the climactic confrontation between Kingpin and Matt. The art throughout this era is also absolutely incredible. I love the early stuff done by David Mack with his watercolor style. It's absolutely amazing and unlike anything else really you see throughout Daredevil. But while this run is long, I never think it really dips in quality. It will take you a good chunk of time to get through this entire thing, but I read every single issue in this run and I don't regret a second of it. It really is just incredible. But if you want more of that Netflix tone for the Daredevil show, I would also say that Chip Zdarsky's run on Daredevil is probably the closest you're gonna get. This is one of the most recent runs on the character, so it's really good for newcomers to hop into, but this run does get a little complicated for beginners. But just because the run gets a little complicated towards the back end of it, I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater with this run. I think Zdarsky is one of the best modern writers, and I think he kills it with Daredevil, and this was one of my most favorite runs and one of the runs that really got me into Daredevil. If I hadn't read the first 5 issues of this run, I don't know if I'd still be reading the character. And those are my favorite runs that I've read for Daredevil. I know it's not a ton, but I do think that the runs I recommend are going to take you longer than you think to get through all of them, and maybe by the time the next season of Born Again comes out, I'll have read some more Daredevil comics and I can recommend them. I want to read a lot more of Ed Brubaker's run along with Mark Waid because I love him as a writer, but also these are just my recommendations. So for me, if you want me to read a certain book, please put it down below because I really want to read more great Daredevil stuff. Also, lucky for you guys, Daredevil is a character that you can't really go wrong with. So go read some Daredevil because unlike a lot of other Marvel characters, he really doesn't miss. Oh wait, I forgot, you're not supposed to read Shadowland!